right, so get this. Okay. Just imagine a world where one guy could make or break the entire U.S. economy.
Yeah.
Just one guy.
Yeah.
That was J.P. Morgan
back
in the Gilded Age. We are diving deep on this financial titan.
I love it.
His methods, his drive, and what his story can teach us about, well, power, ambition, and how economies really work.
It's fascinating. It's not just about the piles of money. It's really about the force of his personality and how one person can have such a massive impact on our entire nation.
So where does it all begin? 1837. Little Pierpont Morgan is born into privilege.
Oh,
Not exactly rags to riches,
right.
but he wasn't, sipping lemonade on yachts just yet.
Right.
He was a sickly kid dealing with seizures and illnesses that kept him pretty isolated from other kids.
That isolation, I think that might have been the key ingredient. In forging the J.P. Morgan we all know, imagine a year alone in the Azores, sent there to recover, while other kids are running around. Pierpont's got nothing but time, to think, to read, develop a level of discipline that most adults struggle with.
Instead of baseball cards, he is collecting financial statements.
Right.
Not exactly the average childhood.
Not average at all. But for Morgan, it was the foundation of his financial genius.
Yeah.
He became fluent in money, He saw patterns.
Yeah.
He spotted opportunities that others just completely missed. This is a guy who, by 19... He's already making moves on Wall Street.
And let's not forget his Civil War ventures.
Oh, yeah.
Buying up discounted rifles and selling them back to the government at a profit.
Wow.
That's some next-level business savvy.
It is. It definitely showed a willingness to push boundaries, something that you see again and again in his career. But, this is the Gilded Age, right? It was rapid industrialization. It was fierce competition. And everyone had this bend-the-rules attitude, especially amongst the financial elite.
It wasn't all just numbers and deals, though. Morgan falls head over heels for Amelia Sturgis.
Oh, yeah.
Whirlwind romance, marriage, but then tragedy. Amelia dies just 4 months after they marry.
Heartbreaking. And it seems to have been a turning point for him. I mean, he really poured his grief into his work, became even more driven and more obsessed with leaving a lasting impact.
And did he ever leave a mark? His first major conquest, the railroads.
Okay.
This is where we see Morganization in action, right? Instead of just investing, he starts merging these smaller companies.
Right.
Streamlining operations, creating these colossal railroad empires.
He wasn't interested in just owning the railroads. He wanted control, board positions, leadership shakeups. Everything had to align with his vision.
Right.
He saw that efficiency and consolidation, that was the path to profit and stability.
So he's not just playing the game. He is redesigning the whole board.
Yeah.
Moving pieces around.
Exactly.
Orchestrating these deals and amassing a fortune along the way.
And he attracted investors from all over the world. Morgan's name becomes synonymous with stability and success. If J.P. Morgan was backing a project, everybody knew it was going to be huge.
Hey, speaking of huge, enter U.S. Steel. He buys out Andrew Carnegie.
Wow.
For $480 million.
Goodness.
That's not just a business deal.
Right.
That's a power move.
It was.
On the entire economic landscape.
And it created the world's first billion-dollar corporation.
Wow.
Think about the scale of that.
It's mind-blowing.
I know. It controlled steel production, but also bridges, ships, railroads, a level of industrial dominance never seen before.
But even titans have rivals, right?
Yeah.
So Teddy Roosevelt steps onto the scene.
Yeah.
This trust-busting president who sees Morgan's power as a potential threat to the nation.
Oh, yeah. This was classic, right? You've got Roosevelt, the reformer, pushing for government regulation.
Yeah.
And then you've got Morgan, the embodiment of, Gilded Age capitalism. He believes in the free market and that the powerful have the right to shape the economy.
And their battle over the Northern Securities Company, a railroad monopoly that Morgan meticulously put together.
Yeah.
That was a showdown for the ages.
Oh, a landmark case, right.
Yeah.
I mean, the Supreme Court ultimately sides with Roosevelt.
Wow.
Orders the company to be broken up.
Wow.
For Morgan, A huge blow to his reputation, and a sign that the unchecked power of Wall Street was facing, well, serious scrutiny.
Here's where it gets interesting. Rivals, they might be, but Morgan and Roosevelt both recognized the need for stability.
Absolutely.
Right.
When the panic of 1907 hit,
Yeah.
threatening to bring down the whole U.S. economy, who did everyone turn to?
Right.
Not the government.
Not Congress.
No, J.P. Morgan, a private citizen.
The U.S. Treasury is on the brink of collapse,
Right.
and everybody's looking to a banker to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
That's power.
That is some serious power, even for Morgan.
Even for Morgan.
But he delivered. He locked the nation's top financiers in his library.
No kidding.
No kidding, his library.
His library. Until they hammered out a bailout plan.
He averted a complete financial meltdown
He did.
from his library.
Locking them in the library.
It's like out of a movie.
Yeah.
Audacity.
Well, it speaks volumes about him, right?
Yeah.
His willingness to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And let's be real, he probably profited handsomely from these crises, too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was a master of turning chaos to his advantage. So we've got this incredibly complicated figure, ruthless businessman, savior of the economy,
It's true.
a man who amassed a fortune,
Yeah.
but also gave generously
Yeah.
to the arts, philanthropy. How do we understand a guy like this?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
He was a man of contradictions. I mean, he was this shrewd businessman who could be ruthless
Yeah.
in his pursuit of profit, but also like a true philanthropist
Right.
who genuinely believed that wealth could do good.
Yeah.
He saved the U.S. economy multiple times, but also profited from those crises.
Yeah. Sounds like a tough legacy to define.
It is. It's a legacy that continues to spark debate today. The questions his life raises, about the role of government, the responsibility of the wealthy, the nature of capitalism. I mean, these questions are still shaping our world today.
Okay, so far we've got Morgan's meteoric rise, his battles with presidents, his almost mythical control over the U.S. economy. But who was he when he wasn't? Orchestrating billion-dollar deals.
Well, he was famously private, disliked publicity, even hated being photographed.
Really?
Yeah. There's this story about how he'd have his portraits retouched
Wow.
to minimize the appearance of his rosacea. It had left his nose quite disfigured.
Wow. Talk about image control.
I know, even back then, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't just vanity.
Yeah.
Morgan understood the power of perception.
Wow.
He knew how to project strength and authority.
Right.
He was a master of self-presentation.
Yeah.
In business and in his personal life.
Speaking of his personal life, there are all these stories
Yeah.
about his lavish lifestyle.
Yeah.
The extravagant parties on his yacht, the collection of rare and valuable objects. It sounds like he lived like royalty.
He did. He had a taste for the finer things in life, and he wasn't afraid to indulge.
Right.
But it's important to remember,
Yeah.
he saw himself as like a steward of wealth. He believed he had a responsibility to use his fortune to benefit society.
And that's where the philanthropy comes in.
Exactly.
He donated millions to museums, hospitals, educational institutions.
Yeah, he believed in supporting institutions
Right.
that could uplift and educate the public.
Right.
He even financed
Wow.
a major project by Nikola Tesla to develop wireless communication.
So J.P. Morgan, the king of finance,
I know.
backing one of the most visionary inventors of all time.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah,
It makes you wonder how different the world might be if that had succeeded.
it really does.
So this complex mix of hard-nosed capitalist
Yeah.
with a soft spot for the arts and sciences,
Right.
and let's not forget,
Right.
the guy who could pull the U.S. economy back from the brink while simultaneously profiting from the chaos.
It's a story that defies easy categorization,
Yeah.
which is why it continues to fascinate us, right? I mean, he was a product of his time, but he also transcended it. His legacy is still unfolding, still shaping our world in ways we're only beginning to understand.
So we've explored Morgan's rise to power, his impact on American industry,
Right.
his personal life, his philanthropy. But how did it all end?
Well, in March of 1913, while traveling in Rome, Morgan passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was 75.
Yeah.
And despite all the controversy, his death was met with a wave of grief and respect.
Flags on Wall Street at half-mast. The stock market closed for 2 hours.
Wow.
In his honor.
It highlights the complexity of his legacy.
Yeah.
He inspired both admiration and fear, you know?
Yeah.
He could single-handedly shape the course of American finance,
Yeah.
but also raise these deep concerns about the unchecked power of wealth.
What about his empire?
Yeah.
Did it crumble without him?
Well, his son, J.P. Morgan Jr., took over, but he never quite reached the same level of dominance. Eventually, the Glass-Steagall Act of 1933 forced the breakup of the House of Morgan, so separating its commercial and investment banking operations.
So the era of J.P. Morgan, the era of the money trust, was over.
In a sense, yes. But the lessons from his story about the power of finance, the allure of ambition, the tension between private wealth and public responsibility, I mean, these continue to resonate today.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here. J.P. Morgan's journey from sickly childhood to financial titan, from extravagant yacht parties to his final days in Rome.
It's quite a story.
It is an incredible ride.
Yeah.
But I think we have time for one more piece of the puzzle.
Oh, okay.
It involves Morgan's relationship with a remarkable woman named Belle DeCosta Green.
Oh, okay. Tell me more.
Okay, so Belle DeCosta Green was Morgan's personal librarian.
His librarian.
A brilliant woman, a scholar in her own right.
Wow.
She was instrumental in building his legendary collection.
Okay.
Wait, so this powerful Wall Street tycoon entrusted his most prized possessions to a woman.
That's pretty progressive.
That's pretty progressive.
For the early 1900s?
For the early 1900s.
It was.
Okay.
And it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
Belle DeCosta Green was African American.
Okay.
But she passed as white throughout her career.
Wow.
She concealed her true identity to navigate the prejudices of the time.
Wow, that adds a whole other layer to the story.
I know.
Here's this woman operating at the highest levels of society, shaping one of the most important collections in the world.
Wow.
All while hiding a secret that could have destroyed her.
Yeah.
It's a story of resilience, ambition.
It is.
And the complexities of race and identity during a time of immense social change. And it's inextricably linked
to
the legacy of J.P. Morgan himself.
It is. It is.
So even after his death, Morgan's story continues to unfold, revealing new layers of complexity and intrigue.
It's a reminder that even the most powerful figures are shaped by the people around them, by the hidden stories that lie beneath the surface of history.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty amazing.
Really makes you think, doesn't it? About all those untold stories, the hidden figures who shape history alongside these giants.
It's true. History is never just about one person. It's like a tapestry. All those individual experiences adding their own thread to the narrative.
And speaking of hidden figures, you mentioned Belle DeCosta Green and how she was instrumental in building Morgan's legendary collection.
Right.
What was it about her that made her so essential?
Well, she was more than just a librarian, right? She was a brilliant art historian, a shrewd negotiator. Morgan totally trusted her judgment.
Wow.
Sent her all over the world.
Really?
To acquire rare manuscripts, books, artwork.
Wow. She could spot a forgery a mile away.
Wow.
And she knew how to drive a hard bargain, let me tell you.
So she was like his secret weapon.
Oh, yeah.
In the art world.
Totally.
I can see how that would appeal to Morgan's sense of, strategy and control.
He recognized her talent, right?
Right.
And he gave her freedom to operate. And remember, this is at a time when women, particularly women of color, were largely excluded from positions of power and influence.
Right.
Yet here she is, traveling the globe, negotiating with these dealers and scholars, representing one of the most powerful men in the world.
It makes you wonder how many other stories are out there.
Oh, countless stories woven into the fabric of history.
Yeah.
It's up to us to find them, bring them to light.
Okay, before we get too sidetracked, I want to circle back to Morgan himself.
Okay.
We talked about the lavish lifestyle, the parties, the art. He also had a family, right?
Yeah.
He did. A few years after Amelia's death, he married Frances Louisa Tracy, known as Fanny.
Okay.
They had 4 children together.
So even with all the business, he made time for family.
It seems so.
Yeah.
And it seems like his second marriage was much happier.
Okay.
Fanny was a strong, intelligent woman.
Yeah.
She traveled with him, and she was known for, her social grace and her philanthropy.
But being married to J.P. Morgan, I mean, the guy practically breathed finance.
Right.
Did they ever, clash over his work?
From what we know, it seems like they had a really solid partnership.
Okay.
I mean, Fanny understood the demands of his work.
Yeah.
She supported his ambitions.
Yeah.
But she also had her own interests. Education, social welfare, things like that.
It sounds like they found a way to balance their individual pursuits.
Yeah.
While still having a strong family life.
Yeah, and it's important to remember, even titans of industry, even those consumed by their work, are still human beings.
Right.
With relationships and emotions.
Yeah. So we've got the tycoon, the philanthropist, the family man.
It's a lot.
One thing that keeps coming up, though, is control. Morgan's need to, shape things, to orchestrate, to be the one calling the shots. Was that just him, or was there something more?
That's a really interesting question. I think it's a combination of things.
Yes, yeah.
His childhood illness, that isolation, could definitely have instilled this need for control.
Right, because if you've experienced a lack of control over your health,
exactly,
you might be driven to control other areas of your life.
Exactly. And then you add in his early experiences in finance, where, fortunes are made and lost in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
He saw how volatile markets are, how fragile businesses are.
So he saw the chaos and decided, I want to be the one imposing order.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. He saw himself as a stabilizing force, a bulwark against the market. He believed by controlling these industries, by consolidating power, he could create a more stable and prosperous economy.
But that control, it comes with risks, right? Potential for abuse, self-interest.
Right.
Did he face pushback for his methods?
Oh, he did. Remember the Peugeot Committee?
Oh, yeah.
They launched a full-blown investigation into the money trust, they called it.
Right. They wanted to expose Wall Street and hold those guys accountable.
They were really concerned about the concentration of wealth and power.
Yeah.
And Morgan, despite his protests, was at the center of it all.
So what did they find?
Well, they couldn't pin any illegal activity directly on him.
Okay.
But their findings were pretty damning. They revealed the scale of his influence, his control over banks, railroads, industrial companies. It was a web that touched nearly every part of the American economy.
So even if he wasn't breaking laws, it exposed the power he had.
It fueled this public concern, about this lack of transparency and accountability. It was a real turning point in the relationship between the government and big business.
It's interesting to think how those investigations are still shaping our world.
Absolutely.
This question of how to balance economic power, ensure fairness in a system that can easily be manipulated.
That's right.
So what about Morgan's reaction? Did he have regrets?
Well, he always defended his actions. He believed that his interventions, even the ones that seemed self-serving, were for the good of the country.
A true believer.
Oh, yeah. Right to the very end. He never wavered.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? Ruthless in his pursuit of control, but also genuinely believed he was making the world better.
Exactly. And that's what makes his story so compelling, right?
Right.
It challenges us to think about these uncomfortable questions.
Yeah.
About power, about ambition.
Yeah.
About the line between self-interest and the greater good.
So we've got his rise to power, his complicated legacy, his family. Anything else?
Yeah. There's one more thing I think is worth exploring. His passion for art.
Right. We talked about his collection.
Yeah.
But he wasn't just hoarding it, was he?
No, not at all. He saw himself as a steward of culture, a custodian of beauty and history. Yeah. He donated a lot of it to museums, libraries, made sure those treasures were available to everyone.
So not just a financier, but a curator. A patron of the arts.
Exactly. It shows another side of him, right?
Right.
That even with all the wealth and power, he was driven by this love of beauty, this desire to leave a legacy beyond just money.
The good reminder, there's more to life than the bottom line.
That's right.
But speaking of legacies, what happened to his financial empire?
Well, his son, J.P. Morgan Jr., took over.
Yeah.
But like we said, he never quite reached the same heights.
Right.
And then, of course, the Great Depression hit.
Right, right.
Which, well, shook the foundations of everything.
Did the House of Morgan survive?
They did, but the world had changed,
Yeah.
The era of the money trust was ending.
So even titans like J.P. Morgan can't escape the forces of history.
Exactly. Even empires are vulnerable.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the stories are irrelevant.
Right.
I think they offer valuable lessons, especially today.
So what can we learn?
Well, I think a few things. First, his story highlights the power of finance.
Yeah.
How it shapes industries, governments, lives.
Right.
We need to be vigilant about transparency, accountability, prevent too much power in the hands of too few.
I mean, that's especially relevant today with the big tech companies, right?
It is. It is. It's a reminder that we need to talk about the role of government, regulations, all of that.
So not just learning from the past, but applying it.
Exactly. We can't just repeat the same mistakes.
Right.
We need to learn, adapt, find new ways to ensure that power, economic power, is used responsibly for everyone.
Powerful message. But before we dive into that, I'm going to circle back.
Okay.
We've talked about his business, philanthropy, family, his legacy. But what about him? What was he like? What drove him?
That's a good question. It's one that historians still debate.
Right.
But some things come up over and over.
Yeah.
His work ethic, his attention to detail, his determination.
Sounds like a force of nature.
He was. Commanding presence, sharp mind, this drive to succeed. But he could also be charming.
Really?
Witty.
Okay.
And surprisingly generous.
So not just this cold, calculating businessman.
No, there was warmth there, humanity.
Every time we peel back a layer, we find more complexity.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that these historical figures, they were real people. Flaws and virtues, passions, anxieties.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of the reason we're still fascinated,
Yeah.
He embodies those contradictions of his time. His story is like a mirror reflecting our own anxieties about wealth, power, the role of individuals in history.
So even though he lived over a century ago, his story matters today.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that history isn't just dates and facts.
Right.
It's about understanding what shapes our world.
Right.
The choices we make, the legacies we inherit.
And recognizing that even the most powerful figures are human.
They are, with struggles, triumphs, and impact on the world around them.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to end part 2.
Okay.
We've covered a lot, but there's still more to explore. When we come back for part 3, we'll dive into the deeper implications of Morgan's story.
Okay.
Capitalism, the role of government, the balance of power in society.
Looking forward to it. I mean, it's a conversation that's more relevant than ever.
Okay, so we're back, ready to dive into these deeper implications. It's almost like Morgan's story is this giant puzzle, right? And we've been putting all the pieces together, his life, ambitions, the impact. But now we got to step back and see the bigger picture.
Yeah, it is like a puzzle. And Morgan was a master strategist, right?
Yeah.
Saw the whole board while everyone else was focused on single moves.
Yeah.
So let's step back, look at those bigger questions.
Where do we begin? I mean, we've talked about finance, government, power, big topics.
They are. And they're all connected. But maybe start with capitalism itself.
Okay.
Morgan was a product of his time.
Right.
The Gilded Age. Rapid industrialization, competition, inequality.
Yeah, we talked about him consolidating industries, building monopolies, but did he ever, question the system?
That's the thing. It's hard to say for sure. He believed in the free market, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Saw competition as this driving force.
Right.
But he also knew you need some stability, keep things from falling apart.
So a balancing act.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And it's something we still deal with, right?
Right.
How do we keep capitalism dynamic, but also handle the downsides?
Right. Back then you had these, robber barons with huge fortunes while workers struggled.
Yeah.
We've made progress, obviously. But those imbalances, are they really gone?
That's the debate, isn't it? Inequality is on the rise again.
Yeah.
Globalization, automation, new challenges.
It's like this constant tug of war. Progress versus inequality. Finding that balance where everybody wins, that's the real test.
It is. It's a constant balancing act. And Morgan's story shows there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
Complex system, competing interests,
Unintended consequences.
It's all over the place.
Speaking of which, let's talk government. We saw Morgan clashing with presidents.
Right.
Sometimes he was like the central bank, bailing out the economy.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about business and government?
It's fascinating. On one hand, Morgan, he really believed in individual initiative, the free market. But he also knew sometimes you need the government.
So not a pure free market guy, not a socialist.
Yeah, somewhere in between.
Right.
He was pragmatic, adapted to the situation, and it raises questions about government's role, regulations, safety nets, fairness.
And we're still having those conversations today, right?
Yeah.
Regulations, social programs, antitrust.
Absolutely. Morgan reminds us there's no single answer.
Yeah.
What worked back then might not work now.
Right.
But the principles, fairness, accountability, balance of power, those are timeless.
So it's about taking those principles and applying them to today's world.
Exactly. History is a guide, not just old stories.
Right.
It helps us navigate now and build a better future.
A guide for the future.
Okay.
Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the takeaway? What should people remember about J.P. Morgan?
I think it's that his story is bigger than just one man.
Right.
It reflects this crucial time in America. Industrialization, corporate power, all that.
It's about ambition, innovation, consequences.
Yeah.
But also about being human. Power, balance, striving for a just society.
Well put. And I think it's a story that will keep speaking to us as long as we're willing to, really engage with it.
That's what the deep dive is all about. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep.